Good afternoon for those on the East Coast, and good afternoon, a good morning for everyone throughout the rest of the country. My name is Michael Buckner. I'm the president of the Buckner Law Firm based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Welcome to today's edition of 30-Minute Web Chat, 5 lessons from college sports cases and investigations. During the next 30 minutes, we're going to review 5 lessons that we have learned through either our own investigations and cases or learned from other high-profile sports investigations that we can offer to you to help improve your organizations or your clients as they go through internal investigations. We're going to use during this 30 minutes web chat a series of hypotheticals or sports scenarios that are developed from our own investigation and cases. And we're going to change the names and the sports and things like that so we can protect the integrity of the cases and our clients. But we're going to use these as illustrative of some of the lessons that we've learned from some of these cases. Let's start with lesson number 1, internal investigation policies. Now, up on your screen, there's a interchange of interstate interchange, highway interchange. And I use this photo as a lesson about the fact that when you drive on a highway, the highway only allows you to exit at certain times and allows you to only go in one direction. And that's kind of an analysis to what an investigator needs when he or she conducts an internal investigation. You should be providing boundaries for your investigator. And that's what a policy does. Let me use an example from one of our cases. We were hired to conduct an investigation of a women's basketball coach. And that coach was alleged to have committed some student athlete welfare violations. When we did the investigation, we didn't find anything to verify that those welfare violations occurred. But what we did find is that the coach violated NCAA legislation. Well, later the coach filed a lawsuit against my client. And in that lawsuit, the coach alleged that the university treated her differently than other investigations involving male coaches. So what we did in that investigation, as in any investigation, we followed the client's internal investigation policy and procedure. And this is a lesson for a lot of organizations. Most organizations that we find either do not have an investigation policy procedure, or if they do, it's so old that it hasn't been updated or reviewed for legal sufficiency. So some of the characteristics that we think that should be in a well-written policy and procedure is it should be in writing and disseminated throughout the organization, either through a policy procedure manual or up on your website, or other forms of communication. It should be approved by the chief executive officer or the governing board. It should identify what office or person is supposed to receive the allegations. It's supposed to describe how the investigator is supposed to be appointed, whether it be someone within, counsel's office, compliance office, faculty athletic rep, or any other person. It should also look at if there are any particular organizational, associational policies, procedures, rules that need to be followed, those should be referenced in the policy. Also should actually outline what are some of the timelines that the investigator is supposed to follow. Should the investigation take 90 days or 120 days or 6 months? That should be outlined as well. Also, what are the duties and responsibilities of various persons and personnel within the university or organization? What are their roles? What are their responsibilities during that investigation? And also, the policy should specify if there is to be a report or conclusion, what should the investigator report on? What should be the contents of that report? The investigator at a minimum should assess risk for the university, should develop corrective measures if there is a violation. Should look at any type of self-imposed penalties. It should look at any possible legal issues that may result from the investigation. All those should be looked at and addressed in a really thorough investigation policy procedure. Now, going back to the hypothetical that started off with this lesson, during the lawsuit, we were able to show as a firm when we were provided, we had to offer evidence during this case that we treated the investigation involving a women's basketball coach the same as we did any other investigation with that client, because we followed the same investigation policy and procedure. We use every single similar techniques and tactics, and we followed every single thing we did for every coach, whether it be male or female. And so therefore the court in that case sided with the client and dismissed any type of charges that she was treated differently, because we were able to show that we followed the same investigation policy and procedure, regardless of the situation, regardless of the coach. And that's why there is a legal liability if policies and procedures are not followed and not followed consistently. Lesson 2 is be organized, comprehensive, and also corroborate. You see a picture of a series of pictures of libraries. I use this as an example that libraries use one or more systems to classify its resources, to organize books and its materials. And similar in an investigation, you want to be able to be highly organized. Using this sports scenario, a client asked us to take over an investigation from another firm. And what we found is that the prior investigator, collected a document among numerous other documents that the investigator collected that was really a smoking gun against one of the coaches. That this document showed that the coach knew or should have known about the violation. However, the document there was no chain of custody established. So we didn't know exactly where this document came from, where it was altered in any way. So at the hearing, the coach said that the document that we used was a forgery. And so the coach objected to its use during the NCAA hearing. Well, why is that important for organization? Well, one of the things is when you're an investigator, you should prepare a plan or how you're going to conduct the actual investigation, and then maintain an organized investigation file. Now, what we use at Buckner, we use an electronic secure file, and we make sure that all of our evidence is base stamped, that we have a chain of custody for every single piece of evidence that we collect, so that if it's a question of whether or not where that document was found and created and how it was stored, we were able to prove to whatever administrative body that this document was a authentic copy or authentic original of whatever source of information. And in that particular situation where the fact scenario that I start off with this lesson, we had to use a forensic examiner, forensic expert, to testify during the administrative hearing that the document that we used was actually an authentic copy of the original. So you won't be able to do that at the outset, instead of having to come back at the tail end before the hearing to try to establish whether or not the document is genuine. You want to make sure that when you're actually being an investigator, that you're not being a lawyer. An investigator is trying to capture every single piece of evidence to try to find out what happened, whether or not the allegation is true or false. So you want to be able to make sure that you're very thorough, and that if you do find that there are possible violations, that you corroborate that with additional objective sources. One of the weaknesses that we find in other investigation reports is that if there is a conclusion made or a finding made, that conclusion and finding is not corroborated with at least 2 or 3 other different sources of information. And so you want to make sure that when you're conducting an investigation, that your organization and thoroughness makes sure that your findings can be supported and verified. Lesson 3, law enforcement and regulatory agencies can be your friend. We had a situation where we were retained by a university to conduct an investigation of a major NCAA rules violation. And the NCAA had received an anonymous tip that one of the assistant coaches on this football team was placing illicit wagers at a local body shop, and that the body shop was being used as a front for an illegal sports book. Well, the NCAA requested us during this overall investigation to pursue this allegation. So we contacted local law enforcement, which gave us our full support to investigate the body shop because they also heard similar allegations. Well, during an investigation, you may come across, even if it's a sports investigation, you may come across issues or topics or infractions that may infringe upon federal or state laws, or may impact other organizations, other accrediting agencies. So you want to make sure that you have already established some protocols internally within your own organization, and if you're an outside counsel with your client, to make sure that when you find or uncover possible federal or state legal violations, that you have the proper protocol to, one, process it internally, and then to report it to the respective law enforcement agencies. Something similar also happens if you're doing an investigation of one issue, you find a possible NCAA rules violation. You will make sure that you have a protocol in place so that the NCAA itself can be properly notified of a possible level 1 or level 2 violation in Division 1, and Divisions 2 and 3, a major violation. One of the lessons in this situation is that the NCAA and the law enforcement agencies can also help your investigation as well, because the law enforcement agencies have subpoena power, and they can actually uncover information that you perhaps as an internal investigator cannot. So there's a lot of different advantages helping out your own investigation, and also making sure that you don't infringe upon a law enforcement investigation. Lesson 4, prepare for surprises. Again, for you is a picture of keep calm, a surprise is coming. One of the lessons that I've learned from conducting numerous investigations, that no matter how well you plan, prepare for your internal investigation, there's always going to be a wrinkle. There's always going to be a surprise. There's going to be something that you didn't anticipate that's going to occur during your review. So what do you do about it? Well, in several situations, in several different investigations, we've had surprises come up during investigations. During the situation, we had a foreign-born prospective student athlete that arrived at the campus of our client. And the head coach that was under investigation had recruited this particular athlete to come to the United States from her home country. And during the interview of this prospective student athlete, we learned that the head coach attempted to kiss her and inappropriately touch her in a hallway on campus when she first arrived on campus. So that was something that we, again, hadn't anticipated for a possible sexual assault to come up during the NCAA investigation. But because although it was unanticipated, we had already planned or been prepared to be able to address such issues in our investigation outline. Similarly, we had a situation where we were conducting an investigation at another university, and we were conducting this interview of this person with the NCAA. And this person was being represented by a very difficult attorney who I had dealings with in the past. So before, I knew that during the interview, this attorney was probably going to kick me out of his office. So before the interview started, I had provided the NCAA investigator with a list of topics and questions that I definitely wanted to ask during this interview, just in case that I had been kicked out. Well, sure enough, during the interview, the witness's attorney had kicked me out of his office, but I still got the information that I needed because, again, the NCAA investigator had my topics, had my questions, and so the information that I wanted to get during the interview was definitely obtained because I had prepared, I anticipated what may have happened and had made the proper preparations to make sure that I was going to get the information. So in those two examples, in the first example, I forgot to mention the first example when the uh, young lady had talked about the fact that there's a possible sexual assault. I immediately stopped the interview and began asking a series of questions to obtain enough information so that immediately at the end of the interview, I contacted the University General Counsel's office and informed them about the allegation of sexual assault. And the General Counsel then in turn informed the University Police Department about that. So we were able to then because there were certain issues that I was already prepared to address just in case those things happened. Although it was unexpected, I was able to get enough information so that the university could properly start its own Title IX sexual assault investigation. So with all that being said, be prepared for surprises. And that means that when you're preparing your interview outlines, you're trying to anticipate what possible issues could come up. And that's through research, and that's through just knowing the witnesses that you're going to be interviewing. Are there other issues, other allegations that could surface during this interview? And if so, what questions would I ask this witness? And so you want to be able to make sure that you have those questions in your outline just in case it comes up. You want to review pertinent laws, agreements, and policies to determine what type of where not the witness is going to be represented by legal counsel. Where not if you're interviewing a faculty member that's a member of a union, where not you should make sure that the union member has a union representative or whatever type of advocate that the collective bargaining agreement asks for or calls for. You want to make sure that you've done enough preparation that the interview is not interrupted for what its intended purpose is to collect as much information as possible in a clear, concise, consistent manner from that witness. And the last lesson is lesson 5, creativity. Now there's a picture in front of you of a baseball diamond, a baseball stadium. And I use that to show that if anyone's familiar with baseball, when the ball is hit, especially when it deals with double plays or triple plays, baseball players are very creative in terms of how they stop the ball, either catching it or trapping it, getting the ball and throwing it to the next player so that he or she can actually get players out and be able to close out the inning so they can go on and hopefully win the game. Some of the most beautiful plays in sports are those great baseball defensive plays. But what makes those great defensive plays so great is the creativity that those baseball players or softball players have. So in investigation, creativity is so important, and not just going based upon just a rote, systematic way of conducting an investigation. Now, you can have a plan to investigate, which is what we recommend, but implementing that plan sometimes takes creativity in order to get information that you probably would not normally get. Let me give you an example. During that investigation of the assistant coach who was allegedly using a body shop as a sports book, what we did in order to try to collect information on that, we used a trash cover and surveillance. Trash cover means is that in most states, if you put garbage out on the curb for pickup the next morning, that in most states that is considered to be available to the public. So what we did on 2 straight nights, we went by this body shop and did a trash cover. We took the garbage that was placed on the curb at the body shop, and we actually took the entire garbage, went to a secure site, and shipped it through that garbage to see whether there's any evidence of a sportsbook operation. We did not find any evidence of sportsbook operation, and so with other information, including surveillance of the body shop, we concluded that there was not sufficient evidence to substantiate the allegation. There's also situation where, on several situations, cases where I knew based upon my research of the witness that we were going to interview, that I needed a different type of investigator to interview that witness. That I knew that having a right investigator would open up that witness, that the witness would feel more comfortable in talking to a certain type of interviewer rather than me. So sometimes I've used women to interview women, or even sometimes women to interview men. I've used younger investigators to interview younger witnesses, for example. Again, it all depends upon the case. It all depends upon the witness. Making sure that I'm trying to be creative, trying to think, okay, what type of person with this witness, what type of person would he or she feel more comfortable to talking to, so we can get the most information from that witness. And then also, there have been situations where we've been trying to find witnesses in the case, and we've obtained their last known address, gone to that particular apartment or house, and the person is no longer there. So instead of giving up, we have canvassed the neighborhood. If it's a house, we've asked to do homeowner, hey, do you know where the witness is? If it's an apartment, we've canvassed the entire apartments before, trying to find information about the person's next known address. It's trying to be as creative as possible, legally, of course, doing everything legal, but trying to be as creative as possible to trying to find information, which is the ultimate goal of a thorough investigation. There's another case in which the target of the investigation was alleged to have been present for a meeting on campus. And there were two witnesses said that the target investigation, she was definitely there at this meeting. And at this meeting, she was supposed to receive some instructions, which she later allegedly violated. So the crux of the case was, and the target said that she wasn't at this meeting. So what we did was we went through and we used computer forensics, and we conducted an experiment, and we found out that through her computer, she was working on her computer during the time that the meeting was to take place. And we did an experiment where we did using a female with the same type of height as the witness. We used an experiment where we walked from the the target's office to where the meeting was to take place. So even if she had gone up from the computer at the last moment that we have found her using her computer, she still would not have been able to make it across campus to make it to this meeting. So we were able to conclude that the targeted investigation was actually telling the truth, and the two persons said that she was at this meeting were actually provide false information to us. Again, that's being creative to making sure that we were trying to verify what the witnesses were telling us and corroborate what the target was saying. And so we were trying to be as creative as possible to find out exactly what happened. And lastly, we had a case where the NCAA staff alleged that my client, coaches, and student athletes were present at illegal activities. And so we collected information from a whole host of sources, including social media posts, dining, dorm card usage, parking lot timestamps, security videos, cell and landline records, credit card receipts, laptop usage, employment records. In those cases, we use in order to locate where each of these persons were at the time that these illegal activities occurred. And we're able to pinpoint that for our client, my client, that he was not present at some or all of the activities that the NCAA alleged. Well, the crucial lesson is pretend like you're like Law and Order, that you're actually one of these TV investigators. And what I mean by that is that if you look at these TV shows, these investigator shows, that these investigators are being creative, trying to use different methods, again, legal and ethical methods, but methods nevertheless are trying to find information in sources from all different sources. And so again, using social media, using forensics, using cold calls, using canvassing, using experiments, using experts, forensic experts, using different types of investigators. All those are different. All those are some examples of different ways to be able to get information from the witnesses and from sources. So at this point, I invite everyone that if you have any questions regarding the 5 lessons that we reviewed, be sure to send those questions to me at michaelbucknerlaw@gmail.com. That's michaelbucknerlaw@gmail.com. And I'll do my best to address each of your questions. Again, you can reach me again at my email address, or you can contact me at the office at area code 954-315-0190. Thank you so much for joining us for our 30-minute web chat. We will have a web chat at least once a month for the entire year. Our next web chat is next month in June, and you can visit our website, michaelbucknerlaw.com, for the date and the topic of next month's web chat. Again, thank you so much for joining us. You have a wonderful day.